On the evening of October 11th, 1973, 42-year-old Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker, co-workers at a shipyard, were fishing off a pier on the west bank of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. They heard a whirring slash whizzing sound, saw two bright flashing blue lights, and reported that an oval shaped craft, some 8 feet across and 8 or more feet high, suddenly appeared before them. The ship seemed to levitate near about 2 feet above the ground. A door opened up on the ship, they said, and three creatures emerged and seized the men, floating or levitating them onto the craft. Both men reported being paralyzed and numb, Parker claiming that he had fainted due to fright, and they described the creatures as being roughly humanoid in shape and standing about 5 feet tall. The creature's skin was pale in color and wrinkled, and they had no eyes that the men could discern, and slits for mouths. Their heads also appeared connected directly to their shoulders with no discernible neck. There were 3 carrot-like growths instead, one where the nose would be on a human, the other 2 where ears would normally be. The beings had lobster-like claws at the end of their arms, and they seemed to have only one leg, ending in elephant-like feet. Hickson also reported that the creatures moved in mechanical, robotic ways. On the ship, Hickson claimed that he was somehow levitated or hovered a few feet above the floor of the craft and was examined by what looked like a large football-shaped mechanical eye, about 6 to 8 inches in diameter, that seemed to scan his body. Parker claimed that he could not recall what had happened to him inside the craft, although later, during sessions of hypnotic regression, he offered some hazy details, and the men were released after about 20 minutes, and the creatures levitated them, with Hickson's feet dragging along the ground back to their original positions on the riverbank. In a later interview over 20 years after the initial incident, Parker's story became much more elaborate. Here he confessed to lying about fainting inside the creatures. He claimed that he was in fact conscious when the creatures took him on board the craft and led him into a room at the other end of a hallway to the left of the craft's entrance. He claims he was laid down on a sloped table and examined by a petite female being. Though he was paralyzed, he was able to observe the being inject a needle into the base of the underside of his genitalia, and the being later communicated with him telepathically, suggesting that he had been taken for a reason. While he was not able to define it, Parker felt a sense of imminent harm. Nevertheless, he was led back outside the craft and deposited back onto his original position unharmed. He then claimed that 19 years later, he came in contact with the same craft again, and this time he voluntarily walked aboard the craft and met with the same female being that he had examined his body in 1973. And he claimed he had a conversation with the being in English in which she communicated to him a religious message. She informed him that they shared the same God, that the Bible was an authentic text, and that her species wanted to live on Earth but could not due to humanity's tendency towards war and destruction. So after that, they decided to contact police, and both men said that they were terrified by what had happened, and they claimed to have sat in a car for about 45 minutes trying to calm themselves down. Hickson then drank some whiskey, and after some discussion, they tried to report their story to officials at Keesler Air Force Base, but personnel told them that the USAF had nothing to do with UFO reports and suggested that the men notify police. At about 10:30 p.m., Hickson and Parker arrived at the Jackson County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office, and they brought the catfish that they had caught while fishing, and it was the only proof that they had to back up their story. Sheriff Fred Diamond thought the men seemed sincere and genuinely frightened, and he thought Parker was especially disturbed. Diamond harbored some doubt in the fantastic story was due in part due to Hickson's admitted whiskey consumption. The sheriff went on to interview the men who relayed their story, and after repeated questioning, Diamond left the two men alone in a room that was unknown to them, rigged with a hidden microphone, and then he apparently published the tape. And this is quoting their conversation. I got to get home and get to bed or get some nerve pills or see the doctor or something. I can't stand it. I'm about to go half crazy. I tell you when we're through, I'll get you something to settle you down so you can get some dang sleep. I can't sleep yet like it is. I'm just damn near crazy. Well, Calvin, when they brought me out of that thing, I like to never in heck got you straightened out. My dang arms, I remember they just froze up and I couldn't move, just like I stepped on a dang rattlesnake. They didn't do me that way. It goes back to Calvin. I passed out. I never passed out in my whole life. I've never seen nothing like that before in my life. You can't make people believe. I don't want to keep sitting here. I want to see a doctor. They better wake up and start believing. They better start believing. You see how that dang door come right up? I don't know how it opened, son. I don't know. It just laid up, and just like that, those things, just like that, they come out. I know, you can't believe it. You can't make people believe it. I paralyzed right then. I couldn't move. They won't believe it. They gonna believe it one of these days. Might be too late. I knew all along they was people from other worlds up there. I knew all along. I never thought it would happen to me. You know yourself, I don't drink. I know that, son. When I get to the house, I'm gonna get me another drink, make me sleep. Look what we're sitting around for. I gotta go tell Blanche. What we waiting for? Blanche? I don't know. I gotta go to the house. I'm getting sick. I gotta get out of here. Then Charlie got up and left the room, and Calvin was alone. Calvin went on to say, it's hard to believe. Oh God, it's awful. I know there's a God up there. So in conclusion, on September 9th, 2011, Charles Hickson died at age 80, but never backed off the alien abduction story despite ridicule. As noticed above, both of them volunteered to take polygraph tests to prove their stories in the end. Only Hickson did so, and the examiner determined that Hickson believed the story about the abduction. Aviation journalist and UFO skeptic Philip J. Klaus argued that there was reason to question the reliability of Hickson's lie detector exam, writing, the polygraph test was given to Hickson by a young operator just out of school, who had not completed his formal training, who had not been certified by his own school, and who had not taken a state licensing examination. Furthermore, the lawyer for Hickson and Parker, who was also acting as their booking agent, had turned down the chance to have his clients tested without charge by the very experienced Captain Charles Wimberly, chief polygraph operator from the nearby Mobile Police Department. Also, that the lawyer did not contact other experienced polygraph operators close to Pascagoula. Instead, the lawyer had imported from New Orleans, more than 100 miles away, the young, inexperienced, uncertified, unlicensed operator who, by a curious coincidence, worked for a friend of the lawyer. Subsequent investigation by Joe Esterhess of Rolling Stone uncovered some additional information, leading to increased skepticism about the abduction claim that the supposed UFO landing and abduction site was in full view of two 24-hour toll booths, and neither operator saw anything that night. Also, the site was in range of security cameras from nearby Ingalls shipyard, but the cameras did not capture anything unusual that night. So, MSN covered it somewhat, and Parker expands upon it a little, so I'll add to that. It was October 11th, 1973. We'd gotten off work that day, and a friend of mine, he and I went fishing. The old abandoned shipyard, they had a little pier out front, and we were on that pier. I'm going to guess it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. It had just started getting dark, but it was kind of a bright moon. He then said he noticed blue light reflecting off the water, and his initial thought was law enforcement officers had arrived to tell the two they needed to leave the property. However, when he looked up, he realized the light was coming from a craft like nothing he had ever seen. A big light came out of the clouds. It was a blinding light. It was hard to tell with the light so bright, but it looked like it was shaped like a football, about 80 foot. It made very little sound. It was just a hissing noise. Then the situation became more surreal. Parker said 3 legless creatures floated from the craft. One had no neck with gray wrinkled skin. Another had a neck and appeared more feminine. And Parker described their hands as being shaped like mittens or crab claws. When one of the creatures put one of its claws around his arm, Parker said he was terrified, but then another feeling came over his body. I think they injected us with something to calm us down. I was kind of numb and went along with the program. He said the creatures floated him and Hickson into the craft and performed physical examinations on the two. Then they were taken back onto the bank of the river. He said he didn't want to tell anyone what happened, but the other person convinced him otherwise. The two contacted Keesler Air Force Base, but they were told they should contact local authorities. So they contacted the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. And according to Parker, the two passed sobriety tests as well as polygraph tests. And Parker said he also passed a voice stress test. The ordeal seemed like it was over, but for Parker, it was just beginning. The news spread worldwide, and according to news reports, Hickson didn't shy away from the attention. Parker, on the other hand, didn't want it. In the years that followed, he said he changed jobs and relocated to other towns. When people realized who he was, it was just something that he didn't want to discuss. So thanks for MSN actually covering alien abductions. I thought only Fox News covered them, but whatever. This has been your host, Luke. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe for more. I hope you have a good night. Thanks for watching.